All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If everybody could wrap up their conversations and make their way into the room. This panel discussion is on thoroughbreds excelling as sport horses, identifying their potential and then transitioning them. Kristin Werner Leshney is going to be the moderator of this panel, and she'll introduce the panelists, but I'd like to introduce her. Kristin serves as legal associate of the Jockey Club. She's also involved with the Jockey Club's industry initiatives related to the welfare and safety of the racehorse and aftercare, including the Equine Industry Database, the Thoroughbred Incentive Program, and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. Leshney graduated from the University of Kentucky College of Law. She's a member of the Kentucky Bar Association and is involved with numerous industry committees, including the Unwanted Horse Coalition, the Welfare and Safety of the Racehorse Summit, and the Racing Officials Accreditation Program. And I'm particularly interested in this next panel discussion because having ridden horses at the racetrack professionally for 26 years, sometimes I would have an opinion about what a horse might want to do in its next career, but I certainly didn't have any knowledge or experience in other disciplines to have a really qualified opinion about that. So I'm really interested to hear what they have to say. Please welcome Kristin.
Thank you, everybody. So today we're going to talk about the Thoroughbred's athletic career post-racing and their potential as a sport horse, whether that's as a recreational riding horse, a hunter jumper, or an elite four-star eventer. Many Thoroughbreds retire from racing in the prime of their athletic ability and may have 15 to 20 or even more years of life beyond the racetrack waiting for them when they walk off the backside. Our panelists today are very well versed in diversity of Thoroughbreds and their potential to excel in a variety of careers. First, we have Alexandra Knowles. Allie has established herself as one of America's most promising three-day event riders. Allie is a Pony Club A graduate and Level 3 ICP certified trainer. Her tremendous work ethic and competitive edge have gained her the attention of her peers and the U.S. Team Selection Committee in recent years. She continues to earn numerous wins and titles with the goal of representing her country at the Olympic Games. In 2016, Allie and off-the-track thoroughbred Sound Prospect competed in the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event, finishing 16th out of over 70 entries in Sounder's CCI 4-star debut. A little bit of information about Sound Prospect, because we are here talking at the Welfare and Safety of the Racehorse Summit. He's a 2002 gelding by Eastern Echo out of Miners Girl, bred in Kentucky by Brady Lee Farms, and he raced 13 times. Katy Rupal is a lifelong equestrian and avid competitor, currently focusing her time on producing horses to the top of the sport while teaching lessons and running her own breeding and sales program. Once a member of the USCF High Performance List, Katy continues to represent her country at the highest of levels, completing multiple CCI 4-star events and continuing to develop a strong string of FEI horses. When not traveling nationally or internationally with the FEI string, she focuses her time on producing the next generation of young horses. Katy's best-known off-the-track thoroughbred is perhaps Houdini. His registered name is Rocky Times. 2004 West Virginia bred by Hot Rock out of Nancy's Star, bred and raced by Cecil F. and Hilda Louise Foster to 5 starts. Jen Roytz was recently named the new executive director of the Retired Racehorse Project. Jen is also co-owner of the Lexington-based marketing agency Topline Communications, and as a writer regularly covers topics related to thoroughbred aftercare and equine health. Jen also is a board member of the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance Advisory Board and the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Jen has 2 off-the-track thoroughbreds, stakes winner I'll Show Them and the unraced horse Lucky to Be Wild, both of whom she rides and competes in hunter jumpers. So before we turn to our panel, I'm just going to talk briefly about the Jockey Club's Sport Horse Initiative, which is called the Thoroughbred Incentive Program. It was created in 2012 to encourage the retirement and retraining of racehorses and to recognize and reward those that have chosen a thoroughbred as their sport horse. We started the program in 2012 with around 150 horse shows, and in 2018 we'll be offering 1,200 horse shows in 43 states and Canadian provinces. It's a huge growth. We have awards in all disciplines from Western, barrel racing, hunters, jumpers, eventing, dressage, polo cross, endurance racing. Covers all the gamuts of what the thoroughbred's versatility can do. After a couple years of offering awards and prizes for thoroughbreds at specific horse shows, we've added some additional programs, including a year-end performance award program, a recreational riding program for those that enjoy riding their horses on the trails, And just recently, in 2017, we added the Tip Championships. We'll be offering this horse show again in 2018 at the Kentucky Horse Park. And for 2018, we also added dressage and Western dressage, as well as Western pleasure, to hunters and jumpers that was offered in 2017. We also offer 2 annual awards. One is for a thoroughbred engaged in a non-competitive career. The winner of the 2017 award was actually a police horse. We also offer a Young Rider of the Year award. It's offered to young riders under the age of 18 that have own or lease a thoroughbred and compete in the Thoroughbred Incentive Program or participate otherwise in the program. And finally, we have what's called a Youth Ambassador Program. We have 12 young riders, again, that represent the program all across the United States and Canada. They set up booths, they do talks. The girl in the top left corner is probably our most popular Instagram social media star. She talks more, I think, than we do about the Thoroughbred Incentive Program and is a great ambassador for our breed. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen now to give us an introduction to the Retired Racehorse Project and the Thoroughbred Makeover.
All right. Well, before I tell you about the Retired Racehorse Project, I just want to thank everyone who put this presentation together for having us here, and also thank all of you. I know all of you work in all different sectors of the horse industry, on track, before the track, after the track, and I just really appreciate how much effort you guys put in personally and professionally for the horsemen, the horses, and everyone affiliated with the sport, so thank you. So my name is Jen, as she said, and I am the Executive Director of the Retired Racehorse Project. Basically, in a nutshell, the Retired Racehorse Project works to increase the demand for and the value of thoroughbreds once their careers are over. So that means hopefully we are increasing how much people are willing to pay for thoroughbreds once they retire from racing, so they can use them as sport horses, show horses, riding horses, whatnot. And we're also trying to increase the cool factor of riding thoroughbreds in non-racing competition. And so we do that in a variety of ways. Our signature event is the $100,000 Thoroughbred Makeover. Our purse is actually well above $100,000. We should probably increase our total to around $125,000 at some point, because we have a lot of added money awards this year. But it's a retraining competition for horses with less than a year of training off of the racetrack. So all of the horses that compete in the competition have retired from the racetrack within a year and a half from the competition, but they cannot have started their retraining until the year of the competition. Basically, we give that added time for horses that could have retired from injury, maybe a soft tissue injury or something, and just needed that extra time to be turned out, let down, rehabilitate, and then started for a second career. Our competition has 10 different disciplines. We do everything from hunters and jumpers and eventing, which is what people usually think of when they think of off-track thoroughbreds and second careers, to other disciplines like ranch work, and we have polo, and we have competitive trail riding, barrel racing. It runs the gamut of anything you could do with a horse, either on its back or even at Liberty Sports. There's a lot of people who compete in our competition that never even get on their horse. They've trained them on the ground to do tricks and different commands at will. So we put that on each year at the Kentucky Horse Park, and this year we have almost 1,000 horses training toward that competition. It's a huge increase from last year, and last year was a huge increase from the year before. We've been growing at about a 30 to 35% rate every year, so that is a really major snowball effect in the best way possible. In addition to the Thoroughbred Makeover, we also publish a quarterly magazine called Off Track Thoroughbred Magazine that comes out 4 times a year, and basically it is everything you'd ever want to know from the off-track side of racing. You know, the Blood Horse comes out weekly for the on-track and sales side of the thoroughbred industry, and Off-Track Thoroughbred Magazine is for everything related to thoroughbreds off of the track. But we also try to pepper in a lot of educational aspects to try to create more savvy fans of horse racing from these off-track thoroughbred advocates. You know, we figure they've already been converted to loving thoroughbreds and they're interested enough in horse racing, but they maybe only watch it during the Derby or the Breeders' Cup or these big race days. We're trying to cultivate a more savvy racing fan so they can be better advocates for thoroughbreds off of the track, but also hopefully some of those go on to be aspirational owners or even someday thoroughbred owners on the track as well. So it's definitely a long goal for us. In addition to those couple things, we also have a huge social media presence. I mean, everybody seems like they're gravitating more and more to social media for their marketing, for their socialization, for horse shopping, everything. So we have well over 160,000 people that follow us on Facebook. We also have a really active Twitter and Instagram presence. And then in addition to that, we also do clinics and demos around the country. So in a few weeks, we're going to be at Briar Fest, which is an event at the Kentucky Horse Park. It draws about 15,000 people from around the country each year who are horse lovers. They love model horses, they love real horses, and everything in between. So this year, the theme at Briar Fest is racing. Everything from thoroughbred racing to harness racing, barrel racing, steeplechase racing. So we're taking part in that and doing a lot of demos and trying to showcase everything thoroughbreds can do after racing. And so the Retired Racehorse Project is a 501c3, and it's also a membership-driven organization. So we have members all over the country. We even have members in Canada and Europe as well. Our members not only have access to, of course, our magazine, a lot of them compete in our competition or take part in our other events, but we also offer webinars to help educate them about how to train or care for their off-track thoroughbred, everything from topics on nutrition to proper hoof care to training tips. We're going to, later this year, do a really fun online seminar basically about what your thoroughbred knows, because a lot of people in here know that these horses know so much on the track. When they get off of the track, it's just learning how to ask them for the right things instead of teaching them from the ground up. So we do a lot of fun stuff like that, and basically we're just trying to help the industry showcase everything these amazing athletes can do after the track. They're bred to be the best athletes in the equestrian world, and we're just trying to make sure that everyone knows how to repurpose them properly and make the most of them after the racing days are done.
Can you hear me? All right. Thank you, Jen. So now we're going to hear from Katy and Allie just about their history as eventers and riders and the thoroughbreds that you have now or have evented in the past. And we'll start with Katy.
Hi, I'm Katy. I'm 31. I'm based in Ocala, Florida. I run an eventing stable there. I'll just tell you a bit about my background with thoroughbreds. My father was involved in a racing partnership when I was growing up. So I come from a family of thoroughbred lovers. While I was starting my eventing career, I held some jobs galloping at various racetracks and training centers. So I'm pretty comfortable with that, with that side of the racing industry as well. I have several horses currently that are ex-race horses that are competing at international level. My top horse is Houdini. He's 14. I bought him as a 3-year-old at Charlestown. And he's been an incredible competitor for me. He's done many 3- and 4-star events. He's been high performance listed. He's won just about every thoroughbred incentive award there is to be won. And I owe a lot of my career to him. Yeah, and I have a few other international level horses that are ex-race horses, and some are still owned by their owners that raced them and bought them as weanlings or yearlings. And so that's really fun that their owners have followed them into a second career. And I really enjoy working with, thoroughbreds are always going to be my favorite. So, yeah.
Awesome. And how about Allie?
Hi, I'm Allie. I grew up in California, and as a young rider, had a few unsuccessful off-the-track thoroughbreds. They taught me a whole lot, but I started on thoroughbreds, and then I ended up moving to Kentucky about 6 years ago, and that has really upped my game in the thoroughbred retraining, and we're just immersed in the environment here, and I ended up getting Sounder. I think 2011, ended up syndicating him And he actually came from California for me as well. So we all just kind of ended up back here, Sounder being bred in California, being raced on the West Coast, and myself ending up here. It's all been kind of like a homecoming, I guess. And he has also been my most successful event horse. We've done several 4-stars together, both here and in Europe. And I've also had the pleasure of riding quite a few other off-track thoroughbreds up to the 1, 2, and 3-star level. I participated in the Thoroughbred Makeover the first year. It was organized, and at that point it was just a demonstration. It wasn't actually a competition. And I went into ownership with the breeders of this off-the-track thoroughbred, and that was a really fun adventure for owners that were, in the racehorse world, to be able to enter the event world, and for me to understand the racing world better. And he went up to the 1-star level, and now actually is one of my student sources. And I also have competed one other at the 3-star level and several others that are currently competing at the 2-star level. And I agree with Katy, they are the very best. And I mean, for eventing, there's nothing like a good thoroughbred gallop. So that's the most about me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. So we'll go ahead and get into the discussion questions. What are common misconceptions people have about thoroughbreds off the track, and how can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively? And I guess I'll start, Allie, with you.
I think there's two common misconceptions that come to my mind. One, that they're a bad mover. Our dressage is very competitive in eventing, and there was a big rise in the want for a warm blood. And I feel that we're moving back towards the thoroughbred with our sport in general. But there's just a general blanket statement that thoroughbreds aren't good movers, and that's absolutely not true. There's certainly ones that are not good movers, and there's warm bloods that aren't good movers. And the other misconception, I think, is that they're crazy, that they're hot, and that is obviously also not true. And I think if you put the time and effort into letting them down correctly, I think nearly all of them are very usable, sane thoroughbreds.
Katy, do you have any misconceptions, or how can we combat them?
Yeah, so based on what Allie said about, the want for thoroughbred blood in our sport, our sport is gravitating back towards a blood horse because I'm sure many of you are not familiar with rules of eventing, but our dressage used to be weighted, and they used to have a coefficient of 1.5, so it was very helpful if you had a flash mover. But they've taken the coefficient away this year, and it's back to needing a galloper, needing a blood horse, so I think you're really going to see a rise in the amount of thoroughbreds, full pure thoroughbreds that are competing at top levels again, which is great for us who are experienced with thoroughbreds and love thoroughbreds. I think I agree with Allie. A misconception is that they're hot or they're crazy, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that sometimes they're picked up by people who aren't very experienced. I'd like to see less and less thoroughbreds being sold for $1,500 on Facebook. I don't think that does the horses any favors. I think that they need to be more responsibly rehomed by their trainers and owners, and I think that you'll see a lot less of that stereotype if we can cut down the amount of horses that are sold on Craigslist.
And Jen?
I think a big misconception that I hear constantly, and I think it's just a turn of phrase people use without realizing they're using it, is when someone has a horse off the track, often they will tell me, oh, I rescued him from the track. And I write about off-track thoroughbreds every single week, sometimes twice a week, for the Pollock Report, a lot of times for the TDN. So I talk with people every week, almost every day, about their thoroughbreds, also obviously for Retired Racehorse Project. And I constantly have to, very politely obviously, correct them that, why do you feel that that horse was rescued? And then when they start talking through it, they convince themselves that it wasn't really rescued. But it's that go-to mentality that's kind of a subset of a bigger problem our industry has that we're all familiar with, that the layperson mainstream public does not give enough credence to how well cared for these horses are, and they're just not aware of how well cared for these horses are on the racetrack. And so I think it's a bigger public perception issue that thoroughbreds do get very well cared for on the racetrack, and they have grooms that love them, and they have trainers who are trainers because, as Graham Motion said, he's a trainer because he loves horses. And that's how the vast majority of trainers get into it, owners get into it, grooms. I galloped my way through college to pay for it. That's why I did it, because I love horses and love thoroughbreds. So I think that's a misconception, but I think it's a bigger industry problem that we're doing a very good job of starting to combat in recent years. You know, every time you see Donna on NBC, she always has either tidbits, if not full-blown segments about aftercare and off-track thoroughbreds, and she and her team at NBC and a lot of the people at America's Best Racing and at the Jockey Club and NTRA and TIP and TAA, they're all working so hard to combat that, and they're really moving the needle. Our RP is trying to do our part too with our magazine and our website and social media initiatives, but I just think it's a long, slow process that, you know, people are starting to learn, but it's something that's just a slow going that we really need to keep working at.
Great. Thank you guys for that. Jen, next one's for you first. From the perspective of a second career thoroughbred owner, what is one piece of practical advice you would like to give a trainer when a horse is nearing the end of its racing career?
This is a really good question. Graham Motion touched on something that really resonated with me, and it was that one last race mentality. And he probably doesn't have as many horses in his barn that he trains until the end of their career as trainers at Thistledown, where I grew up, or Belterra, or Mountaineer, or Charlestown. But, you know, combating that one last race mentality can be done from a lot of different perspectives. And so from a trainer's perspective, having a discussion with an owner as part of your onboard protocol, when you get a new owner, you know, you want to feel them out and discuss how you do business and how they prefer to stay in touch communication-wise and what they know. And part of that discussion in a perfect world should also be, what are you planning to do with your horse if and when he retires while you still own him? And just having that discussion gets them thinking about it. But from the trainer's perspective, it's really good for them to have in mind what their best practices or options are too. And not every option is right for every horse. You might have a horse retiring that is perfectly sound but has a case of the slows that is perfect for someone like one of these guys to buy off the track, and that owner can make good money. And if that's a 4K claimer, they can make a lot more money than they can running for $4,000 claiming. If it's a horse that maybe needs a little bit of time to be let down, if it's a horse that, you know, maybe incurred an injury and needs to be rehabbed, or maybe it's just a perfect horse that is going to be great as a show horse for someone. There's so many options for profit, there's so many options as far as non-profit to donate it to an aftercare facility, but just having plans in mind, having plan A, plan B, plan C, so you have options, you're knowledgeable about those options as a trainer and also an owner, and just having those conversations, it needs to be part of the business model and the protocol for owning a racehorse.
Yep, that's a great comment. Katy?
You took the words right out of my mouth about the one last race mentality. I think that I understand in racing there's usually a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of pressure, you know, on trainers from owners and, you know, things like that to keep racing these horses. But, you know, at least horses for eventing are disciplined. They need to be reliably sound and very tough. And there's a lot of really good riders out there that would love to have, you know, some of these nice X-racers and potentially make these X-race horses famous, you know, at top level, but we can't win medals on broken horses. So I'd like to see trainers be a little bit more understanding of that these horses do, you know, even if they're done racing at 3 or 4, they still have an entire lifetime left. And maybe if, you know, I understand the pressures, but, you know, maybe trainers could start to have a little bit more afterthought for, you know, what their horses are going to do when they're done.
You know, back to the one last race thing, I just want to share a personal story that kind of explains what we're talking about with the one last race. So she said that I have 2 horses. One was so awful he never even thought about racing. The other one was on the Derby Trail, was a stakes winner. He was a legit racehorse. And because he was a legit racehorse, he didn't retire when he should have. And so I knew that horse as a foal, and I do not get sentimental about horses, but I got sentimental about this one, and I thought, I'm going to get that horse when he retires. I started trying to get that horse off of the track as a 6 coming 7-year-old. And every time I contact the trainer, they'd say, I think he just needs one more race. I want to see what he does one more race. Okay, I contact the trainer again. I just want to see one more race. Then he'd get claimed. Then I contact the trainer again. I just want to give him a race or two and see if I can move him up. Then he'd have a layoff. Then he'd come back. I bet I was told one more race by probably 5 different trainers, because he just started bouncing around at that point. I was told that probably 10 times or more. That horse ended up retiring from racing as a 10-year-old and was probably a week away last year from being put down because he just had so many injuries that kept bugging him. And every time I thought I could start him back after racing, he'd come up with an injury. And I'd send him to a rehab center because I was at my wit's end with trying to rehab him and trying to fix this and fix that. And he had GI issues, and he had an ankle, and he has suspensory, and just so many things. So he went to a rehab center 3 different times, spent probably the better part of 1.5 years at a rehab center, and is finally just coming sound, which I don't think most people would have put that much time and energy into him if they hadn't known him as a foal. But that is that one last race scenario playing out. A horse should not have retired as a 10-year-old after having several almost year-long layoffs.
That's great. It puts it really in perspective to hear the personal experience that you've had with a horse like that. So we've kind of heard aftercare shouldn't be an afterthought, which I think is, great. One last race. Allie, do you have any other info you'd like to share?
Really, the only thing I have to add to that is it's not just physical soundness. It's mental soundness as well. Some of these horses aren't mentally fit to be on the racetrack for years on end, and I think that and in eventing, I think we all as trainers in our own discipline need to be realistic at what each horse can emotionally handle and mentally handle in a competitive state. And I think if trainers, all of us, were a bit more conscientious of what they were able to handle, that maybe, their body holds up, they should be able to win, they should, yada, yada, we're going to keep trying. And they ended up fried. I definitely have experienced ones that I got off the track, and they were amazing, and they should have been, they had all the talent to be a 4-star horse or an upper-level horse. And there was 2 I ended up giving away, knowing that they were going to go to a safe, good home that they had no pressure in, because every time the pressure started to build, they just couldn't handle it anymore, and they would just get so panicked about it, and there was no other issue other than their own brain. And I think that maybe that could have been avoided by a little bit less pressure in their previous sport as well. So I don't think it's just physical soundness. I do think there's a mental aspect that needs to be taken into account.
That's a great point, and we don't hear about that part as much as we do the physical, but I think that's a great point. So Jen, back to you. What are some ways to help ensure that horses don't end up in bad situations once they leave the track?
Well, a huge way is contracts. Any of these aftercare organizations, New Vocations, Rerun, the Secretariat Center here, Mid-Atlantic Thoroughbreds, there's hundreds of aftercare organizations, many of which are accredited by the TAA, and they adopt horses out with contracts. And those contracts are very thoughtfully written to protect the horse from going to slaughter, for going into a bad situation. That's a really good way to protect a horse, and you can do that when it's a sale too. You should, whenever you're moving a horse on, move it on with a contract. And I think including in the contract, or even putting on the horse's jockey club papers, that if this horse ever needs a home or is in jeopardy, contact your contact information or your bloodstock agent or whoever. Even if you're not the person taking the horse back, the fact that you can network that horse into the right scenario is huge, and is a huge protection to the horse. And in addition to that, I really think too, solid training after the racetrack is the horse's best friend. So if someone retires that horse when it should be retired and gets it into whatever program it is that's going to give that horse a solid post-race retraining foundation, that will protect that horse for years to come, because that horse will be in much less jeopardy of being wanted because he's useful. So I think those two things go hand in hand.
That's great. And sort of going along with what Katy had said about maybe that thoroughbreds aren't the horse for everybody, especially maybe as a first horse, and that might lead to them having a reputation for being crazy. Should trainers and owners ask for references or something like that when they're selling their horse?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
100%. I definitely think, I mean, we ask for references when we're looking to hire someone, and you're basically looking to hire someone to take that horse off of your hands and off of your bills. And for a lot of people, take a horse that you care about and you put a lot of thought and energy and money into, take it and do something productive with it. So I think references are huge, and you don't have to go out of your way grilling them for an hour and asking them curveball questions, but make sure they have a reputable vet and a reputable trainer if they're not a trainer themselves, and that they know what they're getting into with an off-track thoroughbred. And you can tell really quickly whether or not you're getting a good vibe from someone, and you always, always, always have the right to say, no, I don't think it's the right fit. If something gives you a red flag, go with your gut. There are other people out there who will take your horse, and I really think that can play a huge role in getting the right spot for your horse after racing.
Awesome. So this one's for Allie and Katy. How do you guys source your off-track thoroughbreds? Where are you guys getting them from?
Well, I have a couple really good owners that have horses both on and off the track, so most of them just come to me and are still owned by the same people when they're done racing, and some never raced at all, some never even made it there, and they come to me and become event horses, and the owners really enjoy coming to the horse shows. I'd say they enjoy it as much as, or maybe even a little bit more than going to the races, you know, and we have a blast. Beyond that, if I'm shopping for a horse for myself, the way that I've always done it is I just go to the track and walk around and meet people. And that's how I found Houdini. I've found some really good horses that way.
My experience has all been a bit random. Like, I mean, I got one from a neighbor in Paris that heard that I was a trainer and wanted to know what to do with their horse that was no longer racing, and I thought it looked like a very talented horse, so I went into partnership with them to see where this horse could go. We ended up successfully selling it. It wasn't going to be a 4-star horse, but it was a good story and a successful ending. I've also gotten them, in like the book 4 and 5 sales, like where that maybe they were not wanted by trainers in the racing world, and they look like very good potential horses for us. So I've done that. I've had them sent to me, and I bought them from the owner because they no longer wanted to be in the show world, and I thought it was a great horse. So, I haven't had one specific avenue. I've gotten them from, I'm open-minded. I'll get them from anywhere.
With the Thoroughbred Makeover, too, I've been lucky enough to be able to see hundreds of trainers compete on horses and learn how they got their horses too, and they do the same thing you guys do. They come across them at the track or through friends or whatnot. On the Retired Racehorse Project website, we have a classified section that people can list their horses on. A lot of them get them from there. Our winner 2 years ago, found her horse on Facebook. She only saw a picture and said, I think I could do something with that horse, and if not, I can sell it. She ended up winning a $100,000 competition with it. So it shows how good a picture can do for your horse.
Thank you for that great transition, because let's talk for 2 seconds about marketing your horses off the track. So we've got some pictures here. This first one, just sort of start generally, pictures are so important when you're marketing your off-track thoroughbred. The very first thing to remember is they should be clean. High-quality photos and videos are super helpful as well. Before we look at some examples of photos, do you guys want to kind of just give a couple thoughts on this one specifically, but then photos in general and how you use them when you're looking for a horse?
when I was looking through the slides to prep for this, this actually is my favorite horse of the bunch. I don't care that he's dirty. He's really nice. Yeah, so it is important, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, isn't it? So it's important to have a good quality photograph of your horse, and ideally, you know, for a video of it too. And, you know, if, as a professional looking at a prospect, you know, I'm sure Allie would agree, we don't need to, you know, we don't need a 10-minute video of your horse like galloping around the field. We need a nice video of it walking and trotting in hand calmly, and that's just about it. I mean, it's fairly easy to put together, you know, just try and do a good job and brush your horse maybe.
Yeah, I agree with Katie. I think for us as professionals, we can sort of look through the mud and like we can turn a blind eye to that. But so many of these people looking for off-track horses, maybe this is their only, like this is their one horse that they're going to buy, and it would mean so much. It makes the horse appear to be so much more valuable if you just clean them up. Like, so yeah, that seems obvious to me. But I think that we'll see in the other pictures, the lighting in the picture is really important because you can't see a whole lot if the sun is behind them, and we can learn a whole lot about a horse. Like here we could zoom in and see what the quality of its feet are, and I think that those small things are important, how its neck set is, and we'll see other ones later on, but you can make a horse look excellent and terrible in 2 seconds by the way it's posed. So I think that's really important. And touching on the video thing, yeah, we don't want a 10-minute video. I mean, literally, we will lose interest. We need 30 seconds. 30 seconds, just walk, trot. If someone wants to get on it, cool. If it jumps something, cool. If it doesn't, fine. But keep it simple. Otherwise, we will lose interest and you'll lose it the other direction, if that makes sense. We don't have time. So that's my 2 cents on that.
So we've got some photos here, kind of what Allie touched on. How do you make your horse look good and bad? So do you want to give a little bit of info? Somebody can take one.
Yeah, well, this one, I mean, it clearly looks like it has an uphill balance. Even in the bad picture, if you take away its neck set, it looks like a nice uphill uphill conformation. But then its neck, it looks very weak and oddly set, whereas in the good picture, it fits the whole body. And this was actually on all of the slides, this was actually one of my favorite horses. I mean, great, keen-looking horse, and the first one I would have sort of dismissed it because it looks flat behind and flat in front, and yeah, it looks in good condition with some clean legs, but the second one the good picture looks like a totally different creature.
So here's a chestnut. Do you want to opine on this Houdini colored one?
Oh, yeah, you know, this is the right color for me, for sure. I mean, we'll talk about the bad picture first. You know, from this angle, it looks, you know, not proportioned. It looks like it could have some bad front limb conformation. It looks extremely close behind. I mean, from the photo on the right, it's not something that I would really want to consider. But the photo on the left, just, you know, basically taking the, you know, photo from the other side, its legs appear straight. It's, you know, has a nice ratio from front end to hind end, strong looking back, really nice neck set. You know, it's showing its assets way better than the bad photo.
All right, and Jen, not to be left out, I've got one for you as well.
Well, this is a good-looking horse in both photos. I would just say on the right, it's a whole lot more good-looking. You know, it's really showing off everything it has. In that photo on the right, it's got such a nice neck, and the way the neck comes into the shoulder, it just looks like it would have really nice movement and then a powerful hind end, which is going to put together a really pretty package, and hopefully that one would be a beautiful hunter or eventer or some kind of sport horse. And not that there's a whole lot wrong with the picture on the left compared to the last two, but you know, it makes it look like it has a much shorter neck. It also makes it look like, you know, it's more alert than it is interested, if that makes sense. And so that could be off-putting to some people when it's simply just a photo issue.
So Allie and Katie, you guys have both talked a little bit about syndicating your vending horses, but is there just anything you want to add for any racing owners that might be watching or in the audience about how they can get involved with keeping their horses as they begin a second career?
I feel like an expert on syndication right now because we just finished putting one together. Yeah, so like I said earlier, I have some owners that also have racehorses and event horses, and they enjoy it very much, and they've really enjoyed following their horses into a second career. They get a lot out of it. It's not for everybody. Syndication is absolutely an option. Syndication is basically run like a company, and and sometimes it is a company, sometimes it's an LLC. And, that really works the best if you have a group of like-minded individuals with a common goal. I mean, if your goal for the horse that you syndicate is to sell it and make money, everyone's all on the same page. Or maybe your goal is to, compete it at the top level and maybe win some medals and keep it on, not sell it for a while. Or maybe it's just a horse that a group of people, used to race and they love it to death and they are interested in maintaining it, at whatever level it's most successful at. I think that if you're going to go into syndication, you've just got to make sure you've got all your people on the same page. You've got your goal in mind, and then it can really, really work.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Katie. I think everybody needs to absolutely know what the intention of the syndicate is. I've done both for sale as well as for keep. And Sounder is owned by an LLC and has had several owners come and go. And the whole thing has been very fun. Everyone has been on the same page. And I have had show horse people own part of him as well as racehorse people, all for different reasons. And I think the communication and a well-written contract, I think it does come back to the problems usually started in an assumption or a lack of understanding. So I think it can be a really fun way for racehorse owners and breeders to get involved on a less financially risky level. I think I have had other racehorse or off-track horses that I went into syndication with, the breeders, and it was fun for them, but there wasn't quite so much liability. They didn't really necessarily want to just own an event horse. That's not what they did. That's not what they were interested in, but they did love this horse. And so I myself thought that the horse had a lot of potential. So I essentially put skin in the game by saying, okay, let's do this together. Now we're all at risk. And luckily I've had all positive experiences. But I think that's because of good communication and a full understanding of what the end goal is.
So we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and go. We've got some photos of horses that were available or are available for adoption through New Vocations, Racehorse Adoption Program. So we're going to talk a little bit about potential careers that the horses might have. We've got a variety of sizes and racing histories and things like that. So we'll just start with number 1. This is a bay mare, 16 hands. She was a stakes runner during her racing career. She has no soundness limitations. So who would like to start and give us some?
I'll go on this one. This one was one of my top picks, actually. I do love a mare, and I think this is a beautiful horse, very strong build, well proportioned, great photograph. And for me personally, I have one thoroughbred in my barn that I own and am rehoming or bought it to sell or possibly to keep if it turns out great. And myself, I do need them to be uninjured. And this one, I don't know, it really caught my eye. She's a bit older, so she's probably mature and a bit set in her ways and needs, if she has held up for 33 starts, she's obviously a sound horse. And she looks also, from a picture, quite sellable. And I like that. She has good markings, good conformation, but mostly the soundness she's proved to be able to hold up. And I actually like that. I don't mind that they have a lot of starts and they're a bit older. that's all right. And you don't know how the brain is like from the picture, but it looks like a kind face. And how often have you seen a mean horse with a kind face? It doesn't happen. So
Great. So our horse number 2 is a 3.5-inch, I'm sorry, half-hand mare. She had 12 starts, earned $15,000. Jen, do you want to talk about this mare?
Sure. This picture could probably fit a little bit more into the less desirable picture. She looks a little bit alert. But, you know, from the standpoint of what she's capable of, polo is huge for mares who are on the smaller side. And this one might be bordering too tall for someone to be looking at for polo, but, pardon?
It's that half.
That half. But, you know, she could be great for someone who's a little bit taller that plays polo, or, you know, barrel racing too. People are all, there's a million of these Facebook, you know, groups that are for horses coming off the track, and like Thoroughbreds looking for sport horse homes, or OTTB Connect. And there's actually one called OTTB's 15 3 hands and under. And it's usually people who are looking for polo horses, ranch horses, barrel horses, trail horses, those kind. So she just misses that. So maybe you could market her as 15 3 and kick off that half. But, you know, that's the kind of stuff that a lot of people might be looking at her for. You know, she could definitely also do, I'm sure, English disciplines, but, you know, for someone doing polo or barrels or ranch work, she might be really cool.
Katie or Allie, do you guys have any? Do you want to talk about these? Or want me to go on to the next one? All right. This is a 17 one-hand gelding. He's described as having a warm blood type build with large floating gaits. Katie, would you like to take this guy?
Sure. Yeah, so this is obviously an attractive horse, and he looks well taken care of. He looks, like Allie said earlier, keen to do the job. He's got a little bit of a straighter hind leg, which I actually prefer because I think it helps in dressage with collection. His hind quarter is nicely underneath of himself, which also is helpful. Looks like he'll have a big gallop step. You know, 26 out of 26 starts and only making 21,000, maybe not fast enough to be a racehorse, or maybe not like an ultra competitive horse, but probably has a good temperament, you know, a trainable temperament as a sport horse. So, you know, I'd be curious about 26 starts and only earning 20,000. You know, why was this horse run so much? You know, with obviously not great results. So I'd maybe investigate a little bit more into the vetting on this one if I was buying it for myself. But, I mean, it looks like a lovely horse and could go in many directions. Jumper, eventer, dressage horse, fox hunter. You know, there's so many things that a horse like this could do.
All right, so I'm going to go to the next mare. This mare was retired from racing and was rehabbed for a suspensory tear. Well, she's now ready to start flat work and would even maybe be able to do low-level jumping. Can you guys talk a little bit about, when you hear about an injury like that, what effect might that have on your interest in them for your discipline, and also just in general about their career possibilities?
For me personally, I would not be able to take this horse on because I have to sell it or with the intention of selling it. But this horse actually could be great, depending on its disposition. It's small. She's very well built, clearly very strong. She's rehabbed for quite a while. So, you know, maybe for someone that's taking on a forever horse that otherwise can't afford something, this could be a great horse that, you know, either did dressage or lower level eventing. And a suspensory tear by no means is a deal breaker for its career. It just needs a proper rehab and maybe advertise it as something that is going to stay at a low level, not only for the expectation of the owner, but for the safety of the horse, that it's not going to be pushed beyond its limits. So, you know, like a student's horse, this could be great. And it doesn't, I wouldn't necessarily say every kid should have off the track thoroughbreds, but there's plenty of adult students that I have that are going to be low levels. So, you know, I think this is, it is not a deal breaker for me when trying to place it with somebody else. For me personally, as a trainer in a sales program, I wouldn't be able to take it because I want to try my very best to find something that could possibly be a 4-star horse. And I wouldn't put this horse specifically through that.
You know, Allie touched on something too when she was talking about this horse, and she said if it has the right personality, it might be great for an amateur or a student. And that's huge. You know, in racing, the personality doesn't matter as much. The winning matters more. But for people looking for off-track thoroughbreds, personality is a huge part of what they're considering, especially if they're looking for a horse that's going to be a longer-term purchase. You know, if they're going to keep that horse for 5 years, 10 years, or even the entire life of that horse, they're looking for a horse with a good personality. And so if she has a kind disposition, and if the riders that get on her say, no, she's one of the best horses to ride, she might fit really well into a lesson program or be really good for maybe a kid who's growing up that's really ready for a little bit of a challenge. She takes that kid to a certain level after a couple of years. The kid moves on to something else. This horse goes on to teaching a new kid something. And so that horse could end up having usefulness for the next 20 years. So there's a lot of stuff to take into account.
Great. So this next horse is 15 three-hand gelding, and due to an injury, he is suitable only for flat riding. Jen, can you talk about options that a horse with this kind of limitations still has for a second career?
For sure. Full disclosure, I actually researched most of these horses before she put these pictures up. So I also know that in the description New Vocations had online, it made the comment that he is happy to walk through anything and is bold but laid back at the same time. That is perfect for a trail horse, and there are a lot of people out there that just want a recreational riding horse that they can load up on the weekends and go trail riding. Or there's a lot of people who do competitive trail riding, which I've gotten to learn a lot more about being involved with the Retired Racehorse Project. And so competitive trail riding, basically the horse and rider navigate obstacles that they might find out on trails. Some obstacles you'd never find anywhere in nature. But it basically tests how willing the horse is to go over bridges or through water or just through things that they've never seen before. And so if he's a good character, unflappable kind of guy, he might be perfect for someone like that. And with him not being super tall, if you're on a trail ride, you do not want to have to find something to help you get on your horse if he's 17.2. So he's the right size. He sounds like he has the right mindset. And if he's got limitations, that might be the perfect option.
And if you are in the market for a horse like that, this one is one that is still up for adoption. So check out New Vocations' website for more info. This next mare is also still up for adoption. Allie, I know you liked her. Do you want to talk about her?
This was not an injured horse, correct?
Correct. This one, yeah, no soundness limitations.
Yeah, this is a beautiful picture. They really did a nice job of, such a well-conditioned coat. Good balance, a little bit long in the back, which isn't a deal breaker for me. It might actually make it a better mover. But this looks like the all-around kind of ideal off-the-track horse that you're looking for, right? It's 16.2, so it's middle size, beautiful, uninjured, only 9 starts. Last race was over a year ago, so it's already let down. This is kind of what everyone is looking for in my mind. And they did a good job of advertising it as well. So it's kind of...
Katie, I think you liked her too. Do you have any more?
Yeah, this is kind of the horse everyone wants, isn't it? It's
right.
Beautiful, it's dappley, it's gorgeous looking. I'm sure that any of us would have it.
Well, you can. She's up for adoption. All right, so we're just going to go here to the end because I think Kathy is up there with some questions.
Yep, I do have a couple. So for those who may not have been aware, we've here conducted at Keeneland for the last couple days has been a regulatory veterinarian CE, and we actually have quite a few here in the audience. And a lot of them are kind of that conduit for the racetrack to moving them on. They may be the one to step in and say, this horse maybe is time for him to move on to another career or not. And what would you guys like to say to those regulatory veterinarians? Are there things that you're specifically looking for that you would like them to maybe ask or mention to these trainers of how to get these horses into other careers?
I guess what I would say to some of these, vets, and trainers is that full disclosure is very important for us. For even if a horse has a small injury or has some limitations, like Jen was saying, there's so many avenues that these horses could go into. They don't all have to be top-level eventers or jumpers. There's so many places that these horses can go and be successful for the rest of their lives. And it's very, very important that trainers and vets communicate whatever issues are there, if they're there, so that these horses can go on and be successful. So people don't pick them up with the expectations of it being, a horse that's going to go to Rolex, but it's, it has physical limitations that are going to prevent that.
And with that, actually, what are some of the physical limitations that you can deal with in terms of maybe soft tissue or if there's any bone issues? And then what are things you cannot live with?
Yeah, it's all case-by-case basis, but a soft tissue injury, generally, you're starting from behind. You have scar tissue, you have a weakness there. If it's done it once, it may do it again. So I'm a little bit more gun-shy if it's one for myself. A wind surgery, usually not an issue. If it proved to be able to race after a wind surgery, it can probably gallop for cross country as well. And that's something that we can look at in a vetting. So it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Depending on where the chips are in the ankle, those can also be totally manageable. So, that isn't a deal breaker at all sometimes. And I've had a few actually odd injuries, with I got in a trailer accident, and it has sort of a muscle atrophy kind of scar, and something like that, it came back and raced. So same with our event horses that we're trying to sell. If they can prove to hold up again after, that might not be, but if they came off of the track because of an injury, I would generally point it towards something where it could be more successful, and maybe not try to push. There's so many horses, why push something that might not hold up, and let it be successful in a lower level career.
Okay, and the last one actually has to deal with the papers and registration on horses when they do move into second careers. Particularly, they were questioning about mares with breeding potential, but I didn't know if Kristin, if you wanted to address a little bit about papers, and then also if the other panelists potentially, if they are interested in having them, is it valuable to you, et cetera.
Sure, so I'll cover the papers part first. The Jockey Club does have a process called retired from racing, and that is where the current owner of the horse and the buyer of the horse both sign the retired from racing form, send the papers back to the Jockey Club, and they will actually be stamped as not for racing. The mare, if it's a mare, is still eligible for breeding. They just can no longer be entered at the racetrack. So for those who do want papers, particularly if they want to breed the mare to a sport horse for another registry where they require papers, then that does allow for the papers to be passed on without the fear of the horse ending up back at the racetrack. Do you guys have any thoughts on papers? Do you care about getting the papers, or?
For my geldings, not so much. I actually do what you were just talking about. I have 2 thoroughbred broodmares that I competed and now breed to, I've bred them to full thoroughbreds, I've bred them to warm bloods, and that is the thing. I need their papers to have them inspected. When I take the mares and foals to various breed inspections, I have to have their papers. So that's very important to me. But for my geldings, take it or leave it, really.
Frame them if you want to. Well, I think we've heard a lot of great information, and I thank you guys so much. That was great to hear from you. I will leave one challenge with our audience today, and that is get out and go see a thoroughbred doing something other than racing. You've got a lot of opportunities here in Lexington coming up. The Thoroughbred Makeover is in October. The Tip Championships is in September. And next April, the week before Derby, is the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event where you can see the horses running all over the Kentucky Horse Park and jumping jumps that are as tall as your head. So please do that. And thank you again to New Vocations for the horses and the photographs and the information on them as well.
Thank you, all of you.